Dobar dan, dragi knjigoljubci. Danas imam ogromnu čast ugostiti veliku i popularnu spisateljicu Emiliju Hart, koja nas je već oduševila svojim romanom Weywardice, a danas joj izlazi željno iščekivani roman Sirene. Emilia, thank you so much for joining me here today.
Thank you so much for having me, Anna.
How are you enjoying Zagreb? Is this your first time here?
Yes, it's my first time in Zagreb, first time in Croatia, and I'm having such a wonderful time. It's a really beautiful place and everyone's been really friendly and welcoming.
You're just staying in Zagreb?
Yes.
For how long?
Until Sunday.
Will you have some time to sightsee?
I think so. I think on Saturday. Yeah, so I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, the weather is quite nice.
Yes, it's beautiful and sunny.
Oh, yeah, we're really happy to have you here.
Thank you.
Okay, let's not waste time. I'm really excited about asking you these questions. So, dear Emilia, your novels tell the stories of women across different time periods. Mm-hmm. And what draws you to explore women's experiences through history? And how do you approach researching these areas to really portray their struggles and their triumphs and to connect all of them together?
Well, I think I'm really drawn to looking at women's experiences through history because I think there are so many parallels that can be drawn between the past and the present.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, and I'm really interested in the way that history kind of repeats itself, the different patterns that form over history, and I think particularly regarding like the role of women and, you know, oppression of women and women's rights. It's really interesting to see how things have progressed or not progressed over the centuries. So that really interests me. And then in terms of researching these areas, I think research is really tricky for novelists because it's crucial if you're trying to convey authenticity, but also you can get quite bogged down and it can become a tool of procrastination. So I try very hard to, you know, have a good grounding in the area, and then before I begin writing, and then I research as I go, and using primary sources can be really helpful. But something that's interesting is that often there aren't primary sources from history written by women, and so you know, sometimes looking back from through a modern lens, we have to read between the lines and try and imagine what a woman's experience would have been. That's
a really good point. Your characters confront some really dark subjects, such as domestic violence, reproductive rights, and bodily autonomy. What motivates you to address these issues in your work? And how do you balance these really harsh realities with such lyrical quality of your work?
Well, thank you for saying that. I mean, I'm really kind of driven to explore these topics because they're really important to me as a feminist. And I think that, you know, sadly, women are still struggling for reproductive autonomy and still struggling to be free from, you know, the oppression of domestic violence and sexual harassment, and all of these things still very much exist in our world, and it's something we're still struggling against. And so I feel it's really important to write about these topics, but of course I'm conscious that, you know, in writing about this, I'm taking the reader to a really dark place. And for me, I think what enables me to kind of create that balance is using magic realism. I think that helps me as the writer to kind of tackle these topics. It makes it easier for me without kind of, you know, trivializing the reality. And I think it also hopefully makes it easier for the reader as well to engage with these really difficult issues.
Yeah, that was actually my next question. I have a really deep passion for fantasy or fantastical in work, and especially magical realism, and the way you just intertwine everything. The realism and the magical realism is really soft but incredibly organic, often through nature and nature elements like the sea or the nature in general. So how do you approach this?
Well, I do try to kind of walk a line of it being subtle and feeling as though it's something that could exist in the real world. So I think because I didn't really initially set out to write something that I would think of as fantasy, I was always conscious of trying to make it historical, but with like a kind of slight element of the otherworldly or the uncanny.
You can really feel it's really intentional.
Oh, thank you.
Walking that line, it's really hard.
It's hard.
Often authors are not sure what are they writing, realism or
yes,
fantasy. Even it just you really walk the line.
Thank you
really
so much.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. I'm glad you think so.
Thank you. You write from the perspectives of different women across time and across space. What is your process for developing such distinct voices and ensuring that they feel interconnected?
I think in a way, having women at different points in history with different experiences actually helps me to create distinctive voices, because I'm always conscious that, a woman in, 17th century Britain is going to have a different frame of reference to someone in 2019, even though there will be a shared female experience. And I think that's where the connection lies, just this sense that, there are things that do not happen to us now because we do not live in 1619, but perhaps we can imagine how it might feel to go through those things. And I think, the experience of having a female body is really important to that kind of shared female collective imagination, if that makes sense. And that's sort of what I'm trying to tap into when I'm drawing links between women at different times.
Yeah, I think the best quality of your books for me is the themes of sisterhood and connections among women. How do you craft these relationships? And it's like ancestry relationships or sisterhood relationships, horizontally, vertically. What message do you aim to convey with this, about this power of female solidarity? Do you find this missing in modern era, perhaps, in some ways? I
do think that there is a kind of general social suspicion of women coming together and having female collectives, if that makes sense. And I do think that there are lots of ways in which women are socially conditioned to feel in competition with other women. And I think we can achieve so much when we share our experiences and come together. And I'm really, I suppose, personally in my writing, I'm kind of inspired by the relationships I have with women in my life, with my mother and my sister and female friends, and those, I find those relationships really sustaining and inspiring. And so that's what I'm trying to draw upon when I'm writing.
Given the historical and contemporary challenges your characters face, what do you believe women could do more to support each other?
Well, it's really tricky, I think, because I think sometimes we have to sort of step away from the ways we've been conditioned to think about ourselves and about other women, and I think that is really challenging.
Conditioning.
Yeah, we're socially conditioned to kind of be nice all the time and to sometimes, I think, not speak up. And I have noticed, in the reception to my first book, that I have been accused of, being anti-men, and a lot of the accusation seems to come from female readers, and I think that's really interesting. And to me it sort of says that often we are participating in patriarchy in a weird way, and actually this isn't really something that I explored a lot in Wayward, but a really interesting area of the witch trials is the extent to which women participated in them as well as being victims of them. So for instance, female witch prickers were women who were employed by magistrates to look for signs of the devil. And I think, I don't think that happens in the same way now, but there are ways we are encouraged to turn on each other, and I think we have to.
I think it's important to say that.
We have to kind of really interrogate that and kind of examine that impulse and why we might feel, compelled to do that. What lies behind that?
To be more aware.
Yeah.
You are writing your third book.
Yes.
That's what I heard today. Can you tell us something? I didn't deep dive into what your books are about. I think readers should read them and find out. The first one follows the themes of witches across different generations, and the second one is a beautiful homage to sirens, which I really, really liked. And the third book, if you can say anything about it.
So there will be some commonalities with the first two books in that I am going to have strong female characters, and I'll be looking at relationships between women, so mother-daughter relationships and relationships between sisters. Like, I find those dynamics really fascinating, and I'm really interested in writing about that. I'm also going to be looking at the role of women in a really crucial point in history, and that's going to be the Second World War. And so, you know, the ways that women kind of stepped out of the sort of box they'd been placed in by society at that time, and the opportunities that it provided for women. But then also, like the first two books, there will be a sort of speculative or magical element, but it might not be a mythical creature because I think I'm running out of mythical creatures. I'm sorry.
Well, fair. That's fair. Okay, Emilia, thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you have a really great time in Zagreb. I hope you have fun promoting your wonderful books. We are looking forward to your third one and hope to talk to you again.
Thank you so much, Anna. Thank you.
Hvala svima vama. Ja vjerujem da ovo je bilo kratko i slatko i pročitajte Emilijine knjige, mislim da zaista vrijedi. Pozdrav, dragi knjigoljupci.